Okay, today we're going to talk about Havana. The whole map, we're going to talk about some things I recommend doing, some things I recommend watching out for, focusing largely on the defender's perspective because they are typically the team that's trying to do something more specific. Attackers tend to have more freedom in how they're able to approach a map. So, let's get started with the first checkpoint. So, something immediately evident about Havana is that long-range DPS are going to be pretty good basically across the whole map. Not so much on the second checkpoint, because it's a little bit more confined, but even there you can still do it. But I mean, just look at this checkpoint, right? Giant line of sight right in front of you. That's very difficult to get snuck up on because you can see all of the flank routes before your eyes in one field of view, right? So, really good map to play long-range DPS on. Also, is a good map to play bunker comps on, because you sit up here with your Bastion behind the Orisa, and yeah, it really sucks to push up that street versus that kind of comp. Fortunately for the attacking team, their payload's pretty big on this map, so it's not as bad as it could be, but it's still, like, pretty unfun to deal with. So, long-range DPS, bunkers are good. Close-range DPS struggle a little bit more on this map, just because it's pretty open, and there aren't a lot of ways to sneak up, basically. Like, Reaper can go through one of these doorways, he can go, like, over there, and then teleport under you. But as long as you're watching for, like, that happening, you can't really get snuck up on for the most part, unless there's a Sombra, obviously. Close-range DPS tend to not do so well. On the second checkpoint, they've got more, room to do stuff, but first and third checkpoint, close-range DPS tend to struggle a little bit. But hey, if the enemy team's running like a dive comp at you and you change to like Reaper or Mei, you know, they're still going to be unhappy about it. Though in my experience, I don't see very many dive comps played on Havana, so it tends to not be a huge issue. Maybe on the third checkpoint, but overall, not many dive comps get played on this map. It helps that the attacking team also has a payload that they can kind of like set up on as well. Like, it's kind of nicely designed to do so. So it tends to just be bunker ran backup bunker for the most part, which is also a lot of just payload maps in general, isn't it, to be fair? So you don't really have to watch out for too much on the first checkpoint, other than the aforementioned Reaper teleporting under you. So just, you know, maybe peep the doorway a little bit every now and then, make sure that's not happening. As long as you keep an eye on the doors, that's kind of the extent of it, really. It's very hard to get flanked on. Usually people will just sit up here. This is, you know, the high ground. This is like the best high ground the map's got. You can get up here as well. So, hey, if you can get up here, this is a really good place to stand. Very nice and covered. Hard to get up here. A lot of people flatly can't get up here. So, if you can, you know, this is where you're going to see Widows, this is where you're going to see Hanzos. That up there, good place to stand. But this is where most people's default position is going to be. And similarly to some other maps, it's sort of inevitable that eventually they're going to start pushing the payload under you. It can be kind of difficult to do that on this map just because you are able to subject the attacking team to just a lot of pressure as they're pushing up the initial street. But eventually they'll start pushing under you, at which point you pretty much come over here and start fighting them. This is like the best place to like hang out if you're not on the high ground. Over here is like pretty exposed, and now you're like really close to all of the doorways, so this is, standing down here is a very scary place to be. Nice wide open space, not a lot of cover. If you get into a bad spot, you've got to go really far to retreat away from the enemy team. So standing up here, not so good. Standing back here, pretty safe. You can just shoot at them as they're coming around the corner, and then we can play around all this cover over here. So this is, if we're fighting in the street, this is the kind of place to hang out. Don't hang out over here. I've seen a lot of people hang out over here. It's just a really hostile place to stand. Not a good idea. And this is where, like, the Orisa and everybody's going to set up after that point. So, if they start pushing under you, the goal is pretty much, like, rotate round, fight them over here. But it doesn't tend to go that way on the first checkpoint just because it's so harsh for the attacking team to push up through here. It's typically like they're gonna displace you from up here more than anything before like usually having to jump down and fight them. It is a map where if you can have somebody that can go down and contest the point kind of by themselves while everybody else stays up here, that's very nice. For example, I think it's good to play on this map with, like, the bunker, but then the off-tank can be somebody like Hammond. And then he can go down and contest the point while it's in the streets down there. And the bunker can kind of just hang out up here and continue pressuring the area. Meanwhile, Hammond is being just generally kind of a pain in the dick and won't let them push up. They're trying to get rid of the Hammond while we're up here shelling down at them, and it's just really annoying for them to deal with that, because if we got like an Anna up here as well, healing the Hammond from up here, Hammond spinning around the point, we're all Bastion and everybody's up here having a great time. It's difficult to get rid of the Hammond while in full view of the bunker, so that's the kind of thing I like to do on this map, just having one person that can go down and like contest the point by themselves pretty safely. And then it just makes it really hard for them to push past this corner. Because once they've gotten through the street over here, that's like 80% of the work done on this checkpoint. Because it's way harder to defend from over here than it is from up there. Just because there's not a whole lot of ways up here. And even if they're running a dive comp, like, the windows aren't particularly nice to jump through for the most part. If you've got like a Bastion sat right in this window, it's really hard to get up here. The thing to really watch out for is just like someone teleporting under you and coming up the staircase behind you, which is more often the way people get surprised up here, but people tend not to run Reaper on this map so much, so that doesn't tend to happen too much. It's more likely to be a Sombra, but it's something to bear in mind. So yeah, that's pretty much the first checkpoint. It's not particularly complicated because it's basically just one long corridor with some high ground over it, and only a couple of, like, flanking routes, right? The enemy team can't really do too much fancy stuff because, you know, it seems like there could be like a doorway over here or something that they could use, but nope, no such luck for them. They've got the hallway, and that's it. Granted, I don't think this map necessarily needs much revision, to be honest with you. Somewhere like Paris, you know, that could perhaps do with some balance adjustments, but Havana, for the most part, I think is actually kind of fine. Though, you know, it doesn't strike me as being too unlikely that at some point in the future they could, like, open up a door over here that goes through over there that you could use as a flank. I could see that happening one day, but Havana seems mostly fine, to be honest. But that's kind of the first checkpoint. There's not a lot going on over here. If you can get up there, that's like the best place you can stand. Otherwise, up there, once they push down, fight over here. Don't fight over in the open square. That's really scary. So let's go over to the second checkpoint, which is more interesting geometry-wise. So this is a map where the checkpoint where the long-range DPS are a little bit less good. As we can see, it's a much more confined location. There aren't so many good lines of sight, because this is, like, scary to stand over here. If you're all the way back over here, you can't really see down there as well once they come around the corner. This is, like, our choke point for this checkpoint, really, right here. Well, not just there, because, like, coming all the way up to this corner is kind of choke point-esque, but the attackers have got a lot of options on this checkpoint, so it tends to be very difficult to hold. Just generally speaking, the maps that have got more options for the attackers to take are typically the ones that are harder to defend. So this is where McCree is, like, really good as far as the hit scan DPS go, because you're in range where you can flashbang, like, pretty much anybody that comes to get you. And the more confined location lends it a little bit more to Reaper. This is, or to McCree rather. Though this is also the checkpoint where, like, McCree, Reaper and May get better as well, being a much more confined location. We've got places where we can feasibly wall people off and kill them now. And just, like, chucking Blizzard, like, down here as they're pushing up is really annoying. So this is where the ultimates that punish grouping and the more close range heroes get to shine a little bit. This is still, like, a good place to run a bunker, because you can just sit the bunker here, and, you know, they've got to do kind of the similar thing previously. Now you've got way more to watch out for, though, because you've got a bunch of different ways you can get flanked from, because you can get flanked over here, both high and low. So if you're hanging out here, like, it's scary to stand up here by yourself if you're somebody like Ashe or Reaper, or Asher Soldier, because somebody can come through this doorway, and unless you're watching it, then they can get on you pretty quickly, and you don't necessarily get a lot of advanced warning, even if you are watching the doorway, so this is a little bit scary sometimes, because they're right there. But this is where bunkers are usually set up, though. If you have to jump down to fight them, you know, it's not exactly very far away. You have to watch out for over there as well, because the attacking team can go through there. So now the attacking team have got, like, more angles of approach. I've also seen, like, Faras hang out up there to harass people through the gap, which is kind of annoying also. But if you got, like, McCree, you can just kind of, like, come over and contest them. It's not the end of the world. But you've got more shit to keep track of now, because you've got all these different ways to approach. If you can, well, we don't typically fight, like, over here unless we have, like, a really brawly team. Like, if we've got, like, maybe a dive comp, Reaper, May, you know? I've seen fights kind of break out over in this area, but for the most part, you kind of don't bother with this section as the defending team too much. Especially since you probably were running long-range DPS in a bunker previously. You might not have had chance to switch or not, so this tends to not be super good. Usually it's more just playing a little bit further back here and using this as the choke point of the map. This is like the most aggressive place you can stand as the long-range DPS, because you've got a pretty, like, aggressive line of sight. If you're scared, though, you can sit back here, and this is way safer. This is nowhere near as aggressive of a line of sight, because also remember the attacking team's payload is pretty big, so as they're pushing through there, that's going to be taking up a lot of space. But this is way safer to sit back here, so if you're feeling unsafe over there, this is like the next best place to come and stand. You do have to watch your sides, because you can get flanked here, but they're pretty long hallways. Like, if you're just checking over this way, you'll see, like, the Reaper or the Genji coming from pretty far away, and you can just, like, hop out. But you do have to watch, because you can get flanked now. It's not exactly difficult to watch the flanking routes from here, because you can, even if you're, like, shooting over here, as long as you just, like, look over every now and then, you know, you can see somebody flanking you. But we've all seen the Ashe or the Widow that's just, like, looking down their scope, shooting over there the whole time, and then you don't see the Genji, like, come through this doorway and sneak up on you. So, as long as you check, it's not the end of the world, but sometimes people forget to check, you know, so especially like someone like Reaper can, like, teleport past as well and, like, cut down the time, so you've got to watch somebody else. It's an open enough space where somebody else will usually spot it, even if you don't, but still, you can't rely on other people, right? So just keep an eye on it. So that's the safer place to stand. This is the more aggressive place to stand, but, you know, sometimes you can't sit up here. Maybe they've got, like, divey heroes. You're just not feeling safe. They keep, like, coming up this way and, like, pressuring you. The cover is also not as good, and, like, if you have to, like, retreat backwards, like, it's not that unusual for, like, their McCree or somebody to come over there and start fighting. So if you're, like, over here and get pushed backwards, you're in his line of sight the entire time, because there's this giant open window here. So sometimes you can get, like, forced back here into, like, a really unfortunate situation where you can't sit here because you're getting pressured, so you have to back up, but if somebody's over there, you can get pressured the whole time as well, so that's also something to watch out for if you're standing over here. But if you're someone like McCree, you're not necessarily that bothered about somebody coming over here to contest you necessarily, because if, like, Genji Reaper comes through this doorway and you're playing McCree, you're not that bothered about it for the most part, as long as they don't surprise you. And this is, like, part of the reason McCree ends up being good again, like, really good on this map, just because it's confined, so someone like Widow, Soldier, they're not going to be so happy about it, and the flashbang gets a lot of value just because of, there's usually a lot of people climbing out of different doorways at you. If they aren't just running, like, a bunker straight through the point at you, in which case, hey, hopefully your bunker goes better than them. Better than theirs, rather. So, usually we'll hold, like, over here. Inevitably, we'll eventually probably get pushed backwards, in which case, we've only really got right here. You can reinforce pretty quickly at this point, because your spawn isn't super far away, and you can, like, jump down directly onto the point again, so sometimes this checkpoint gets a little bit too CP-ish once, you know, you start losing ground and your team switches to, like, Hammond, Trace, or Lucio. You can kind of stall it out over here for a long time. This is also where people like May and Reaper get to shine as well for defending this particular stretch, because you'll notice this is just a big open square. And there's not exactly a lot of cover over here. You got, like, that doorway, and that's kind of it. So, you chuck Blizzard down here. Well, they're getting off the point, and there's not a lot of cover for them to actually use, so someone like May tends to be pretty, get a lot of value over here. McCree, also, Deadeye has the potential to get, like, a lot of kills over here as well, just because there's so little cover. But if you do it at the wrong time, you're still pretty close to the enemy team, especially since they're going to be pushing up this, in all likelihood, if you're ulting back here. So, you can end up dying if you do it at the wrong time, but those kinds of ultimates where, like, getting into cover is the only real counter to it. They can be pretty scary over here, like self-destruct also, you know, those kinds of ultimates. Though self-destruct not so much, because you can just use the payload for cover as well, but you get the idea. It's scary because it's a big open square, pretty much. And that's pretty much the checkpoint. You know, bunker's still good here. Reinhardt isn't so bad in here, because there's a lot of cover for him to use while he's waiting for his shield to regenerate, but it's often just going to be end up being better to run Orisa for the most part as well, because it's pretty hard to play Reinhardt right now. Orisa ends up being better for a lot of stuff, especially since the attacking team is in all likelihood running Orisa back at you. You'll probably want to run Orisa back at them as well. That's pretty much it. Yeah, so there you go. That's what you got to watch out for. Like over there, that's also like if there's a Sombra, she's likely to use like that health kit over there. So you know, be wary of like that side of you. And then this one over here also is where the Sombra will usually hang out at. So you know, those are the places to watch out for as common Sombra locations. But pretty much sit back here if you're long range. If you're feeling really aggressive, like you can come and start playing over here. This is like not too scary to do because there is a health kit over here as well. Like you can come over here as somebody like McCree, and as long as they don't have like a really aggressive team comp, you can like come over here, like try and poke at them a little bit and retreat relatively safely. Also, if you're playing like Roadhog, you can do the same thing. You can come over here and like get a different angle on them as they're pushing up and try to hook somebody. And it's relatively safe because you don't actually have that far to go to get back to safety. So as long as they aren't super aggressive team comp, this is relatively safe to do, but you know, still be careful because you will be really close to the enemy team. But if they're like if they're bunker and they've got nobody with vertical mobility, like the worst you have to worry about is coming around the corner and like getting halted in view of them. So someone like Roadhog, you don't really have to care. Someone like McCree, you'll have to be a little bit more careful, but relatively safe for the most part. I've gotten stuck in the corner. There we go. So that's the second checkpoint. Now let's come over to the third checkpoint. So this is where the long-range DPS get really good again. Look at all these lines of sight, and then you've like literally got this little rampart to come and stand up on as well. And look, you can see fucking everything up here except for what's behind that tower. So this is where like long-range DPS get really good again, and this is where people on your team are going to go like, it's time to play Widowmaker. Because, yeah. So, early on during the map, or during the checkpoint I should say rather, this is not really early on in the map anymore. Early on, you don't really want to fight anywhere over here as the defending team, because look how far you have to go to retreat, right? And it's not a particularly good place to be standing. There's very little cover over here. You are in this narrow funnel, so if you have to retreat backwards, like, if you're fighting over here and you're in a bad spot, you've got to go all the way over here until you start being safe again, right? So you don't want to fight over in this region at all as the defending team. Early on, we can come fight over here. This isn't that bad, because, I mean, we got cover right here, and we're really close to this as well, so we can retreat as we need to. So we can sit over here, but this is one of those positions where you have to be pretty willing to give up on it, because it's not particularly easy to hold this area. Like, this is not a choke point that we can really hold. Like, it's sort of a choke point, but it's not really. So it's very hard to play around this area. So if we're standing over here, which we will be early on in all likelihood, like this is where you're Orisa and everybody's going to come stand at the start, but you want to be willing to give up on it once the enemy team starts getting close to you, because it's not super feasible to hold them here. And then we retreat backwards over here, and now we've got a choke point that we can defend around, right? So this is some proper, like, defend the Alamo arrangements back here, where they do not have very many ways in. So don't, like, choose this hill to die on over here, because if you die over here, the enemy team is going to get to push mostly across this bridge, uncontested, while you're respawning, so they'll be, like, getting through the choke point as you're coming back, and that's not what we want. We want to actually leverage this extremely strong choke point as much as we can, so it's okay to stand over here, but you have to know when it's time to give up and come stand over here instead. Because this is very obnoxious. And then, you know, you gotta watch out for over here. This is the most common flank route that people are going to take to try to get to you, so, like, watch this side. They can come through over here as well, but it's a lot harder to get to this doorway unnoticed, so that doesn't tend to get used so much, but is still something to bear in mind. This is the one to watch, because everybody can get here, right? Like, you can just go around this way, and then, bam, you're sneaking up on them. So you've got to watch this region as far as flanks go. And bear this one in mind, but tends to not be so much of an issue. What you've got to be more afraid of from, like, this corner is while the attacking team are pushing in, it's not that weird for, like, their Roadhog to come through here. Because if we're defending, like, here, right? It's not weird for their Roadhog to come through here, and now he's got a different angle on our shield to try and hook somebody through the doorway, and it's pretty easy for him to just run back through here if he doesn't get collapsed on super harsh, so watch for that happening over there, and watch for, like, the real flanks over there. So as they're pushing up, if you're playing a long-range DPS, this is, like, the best place you can stand, pretty much. It's not awful to stand. It's not awful to stand over here. This is a more aggressive angle, certainly. But you have to be really ready to move as soon as things get scary over here, because this is an aggressive angle, doubtlessly. You can see past the tower now, which you can't from over there, and you can see them the whole time they're coming up. But you're much closer to them, and your method of retreat is much further away. So don't come stand over here as, like, McCree, because McCree's too slow. As things get scary, it's going to take him too long to run away. If you're playing, like, Widow, Hanzo, even Soldier, they can run away a little bit faster, so, you know, they can come and stand over here, but you've got to be really ready to move so you don't get caught over here. This is just default, pretty much the best place you can stand. It's less aggressive, but it's extremely hard to die. Like, the only way you're really gonna die standing over here as the long-range DPS is if their long-range DPS gets you. So that's the only thing you really have to be afraid of. Like, you can get dove up here, sure, you know, that's possible, but I've almost never seen it happen, just because of, like, the sheer, like, open space you have to traverse to get here, because if they're playing, like, Winston, they've got to, like, walk all the way to this edge before they can really get in range to, like, jump at you. So they're, like, taking damage the whole time coming over, and then they jump up, and if you're playing, like, most any of the long-range DPS, you're not really bothered if they jump you, because if I'm playing Ashe, I just shotgun you back, and now you're down there, right? Same for, like, any of the diving tanks as well. So then you're just kind of down there. If it's playing McCree, right, you just flashbang them as they're coming in, stuff like that. So you don't get dove up here very often. It happens sometimes, but you are far more likely to get killed by their long-range DPS than anything else. So, you know, you can stand there if you want, but be really, really careful if you choose to do that. This is where I recommend standing, just because it's so safe. It's extremely safe to stand up here. Especially, like, if you're playing, like, Widow or Ashe and there's a Mercy, like, look, you're stood up here, Mercy stood back here. Literally nothing can happen to Mercy as long as she watches the doorways, right? Like, unbelievably safe position, extremely obnoxious if there's a good sniper sat up here with a Mercy. Oh, it's the worst. And that's when you start, like, having to get the long-range DPS or the divers over here to disrupt them. But, like, this is a great place to stand. And, like, if somebody runs in that room, like, you're playing, like, Widow, Ashe, like, sick dude, right? Like, no big deal. Just chuck all the dynamite down there at them. Widow, you chuck the Venom Mine in there at them, and they're like, oh, fuck, this wasn't as safe as I initially thought it would be. I've seen a lot of people get stuck in there just because, like, McCree's like, yeah, I'm gonna walk up and get her. Oh, fuck, I can't. And then he runs back in, and you're like, alright, McCree. Got him. Anyway, so that's what you do. And this is where, like, the main crux of defense is gonna be. Now, you know, you've got to be willing with, like, payload maps to concede, or hybrid maps as well. Because you might be thinking, well, if we only really thinking of defending all the way back here, aren't we, like, conceding, like, 80% of the track for free just to defend over here, more or less, with, like, a little bit of defense over here? And yes, we are basically doing that. But the thing is that the payload maps, for the most part, might as well just be control points, to be honest with you, because all payload maps only really have a couple of points along the tracks that are really feasible to defend in. Like, you know, Dorado, the first checkpoint, you only really worry about the archway, right? Like, that's the main part of the defense. You don't worry about the streets preceding that, right? Second checkpoint, you don't worry about, like, the first corner for the most part. You worry about, like, the second end, and, like, really the bridge is, like, the defending point on there, right? So all payload maps are kind of this way, where you have to be willing to give up ground, just because it's not feasible to defend it, right? Because that's how I see most teams end up losing on this checkpoint, is they start trying to defend places that are just ridiculously difficult to defend. Like, over here, it's not impossible you hold this position, but it's really fucking hard to do so. But the amount of times I've seen people die over here, just, like, trying to defend that gap, then they've got to respawn, so they're like, oh, fuck, we died over there, and then they've got to come all the way across. By the time you get back, the attacking team's, like, here, so you don't really get to defend that point anymore, and now you're, like, defending this spot, like, immediately, but you, like, gave them ult charge and conceded all that ground for free, where you weren't even harassing them as they were coming in, and then, like, they can snowball back on you, because most people don't want to wait either, so you, like, died defending that untenable place. You're respawning, somebody else gets picked off as the rest of you are coming back, so then, like, this part gets even harder to defend. That's what usually ends up happening on, like, this map, and payload maps in general, because people aren't willing to concede this. Like, I remember, this got way less severe as time went by, but I remember right when the game came out, like, Route 66, you know, people are just, like, pressing right up against the attacker's spawn door, right? And we all know now that the best place to start defending on Route 66 is the first corner next to the gas station. But so many people would scream at you, oh, why don't we just let them push all the way to the end of the fucking track then if we're not going to contest them, right? Like, you have to concede ground and fight around the places that are actually feasible to mount a defense. Don't get greedy being like, oh, Jesus, but I really don't want them to push through, like, 70% of the track to get to the defense spot. Like, no, it's not feasible. We gotta defend back here. So, nothing much has really changed as far as, like, heroes that are good to play, because it's still long-range DPS. Bunker's still great, you know, as you'd expect from, like, any kind of map like this where we're playing long-range DPS as well. I guess I didn't say supports, like, you know, Ana Batista, Zenyatta, pretty much the best ones to play. Shocker, I know, you know, the 3 best supports in the game end up being the best supports to play on the map. Who would have guessed? Which I'll say for completeness' sake just because, but they're pretty much the best ones to play. And those are about the only things you really have to watch out for, is those doorways over there, and once they're, like, pushing up there, watch for people, like, being, like, cheeky, basically, and pushing through here to try and, like, hook somebody. But for the most part, like, Blizzard maps are this way, where they start out relatively open, in theory. They all start out pretty open, and then they, like, narrow in as the map progresses, so that defenders get to, like, really, like, dig their heels in against the wall for the desperate last stand. And this is, like, the embodiment of that. You're literally in the fucking fort, defending it for, like, the last bastion, right? So there aren't many points of ingress for the attacking team. This is the only major point. So it's really just, like, about not being greedy on this checkpoint in particular, which is the most common reason I see it be lost, is defending over there and conceding a bunch of ground, or not being willing to give up on this corner early enough, because, like, I recommend not even fighting over this corner, right? Like, don't bother. Like, stand here and harass them as they're coming up. Like, if you can stall them out over here for a little bit, great. But, like, once they get to you, or start getting to you, like, just back up, like, immediately and start defending this. Because this is so much easier to defend. Like, this is a really obnoxious choke point to push through. Because you've got your you've got, like, the main bulk of your defenders down here. So you've got your Orisa, your Roadhog, you know, your Bastion, Torbjorn, whatever the fuck you got, right? And then up here, the whole time the attacking team's trying to get across that, somebody's up here just, like, doing this. And there's, like, almost no cover on that bridge. So they've got the payload in their shield, and that's it. So they're getting harassed the whole time from the main force. They're sat up here, just, like, picking away at them. And those are, like, their options. The attacking team doesn't get a whole lot. So the way that this point gets lost is being greedy, or the defending team just, like, a bunch of people get picked off at the same time, and they end up losing a bunch of ground. That's what happens. So it's really just about not being greedy. You can do some, you know, cool stuff over here as well if you're a little bit more coordinated, because, like, if you set, like, your bunker up over here, holy fuck is that annoying. You've got to have somebody that's going to be able to touch the point while you're over here, so, like, you know, whatever else you got tank-wise, but, like, if you've got your bunker set up over here, like, holy fuck are you dug in? And they can't even begin to start fighting you until they've already come around this corner, right? So, as long as somebody can contest the point while you're up here with the bunker, oh fuck, that's annoying. I've seen that happen a couple of times, but it's pretty rare because it requires a little bit more coordination, and the bunker team has to be, like, trusting of the person that's over here touching the point, right? So they don't just end up getting captured. And you've got to watch the flank way more at that point, because if you're over here, you can't see the doorway under you anymore, which, as I already pointed out, is the main flank route, so you've got to be careful. But, like, that can be very annoying, but, you know, it's pretty straightforward. Havana, overall, is a pretty straightforward map. You know, you kind of look at this, and you just go, yeah, I think I'll play Ashe, Widow, Hanzo, right? Like, that just kind of feels like what I'd want to do when I've got a vantage point like this. Like, this is one of the most, like, ridiculous vantage points in the entire game, isn't it? Like, just look at the sheer amount of ground you can see, and how safe you are at the same time. It's insane. A really good sniper, or not even necessarily sniper, it's a really good, like, soldier, even McCree up here, is, like, extremely annoying to play against. It can be very oppressive, especially if it's a very good Widowmaker. Oh, fuck. This is, like, the most overpowered Widow feels in the whole game when she's up here. So, there you go. It's a pretty straightforward map overall. So that's pretty much defending Havana. You know, that's what I recommend doing. Those are the things to watch out for. Overall, not a whole lot to watch out for, all things considered, because there aren't that many options for the attacking team, which is why attacking can be a little grating, but not as much as, like, Paris. So, attacking. So, now we've got the horrible job of pushing up the street. So what do? Well, most commonly, we're just gonna go, like, bunker comp and, like, play it right back at them, right? Because you can get on the payload pretty safely. Like, you don't expose yourself to them too much until you're on the payload. And this is, like, one of the most conveniently shaped payloads in the whole game. Even if you don't have an Orisa on it, but you probably do, like, you can just, like, do this, right? And that's kind of annoying. So the payload is, like, a very convenient shape for this map, which is very nice, but... So, what we're commonly gonna see is the bunker up there. So how do we deal with that situation immediately? Well, pretty much we try and not deal with it as much as we can until we get to them. So, you know, we can push the payload up as far as we can, right? Because we're going to be able to push it at least some way up the street before they really bother to stop us. We'll probably get it to, like, up to the top of the hill, if nothing else, before they start contesting us. Maybe not quite, maybe the bottom of the hill. Either way, we'll get it some way up. Once we get there, this is where it becomes oppressive. So now, though, we've got to try and get rid of the bunker before we can feasibly push it, right? Unless they're just going to let us push it right under them. If they're just going to let us push it right under them, fucking great news for us, right? But they probably won't let you do that, unless they're really bad. We're going to start getting contested some way around here. So we've got to deal with the bunker. So we want to take a route where we are exposed to the bunker less, because going this way, oh god, it's terrible. Now, just because it's a payload map, you don't have to stick to the payload the entire time. You are allowed to leave the payload, do other things, kill the enemy team, then come back to the payload. or have most of your team go off killing them while one person's touching the payload, right? Like, not everybody has to be on the payload. We can go off and do other things. So, we can take the other routes, right? We can come through here. Because what'll usually happen, I see happening as well, is, you know, a lot of people will defend up there, but, like, just as many people will not actually bother with being up there. They'll actually just stand here instead. And they'll just defend from, like, this position instead. And, you know, I recommend being up there, but this is what a lot of people will do. So if they're doing that, then coming through this doorway puts us, like, right on top of them. Now, we have to be careful, because if there's, like, a Mei or something over here, walking through this doorway can easily be death. But if they're defending, like, right here, this does the job of getting us to the enemy team. So now we can fight them without, like, going through that obnoxious path, right? So this ends up being good. If they're up there, then we can go around this way, and, you know, this is a little bit, like, more cumbersome to do, but also worth noting you can do it without really exposing yourself to the enemy team the entire time, because you come out here, oh, exposed a little bit, and never again, right? So you can come all the way through here, basically being in cover the whole time. Also, it's feasible they won't see you, because you're really far away. So if they're, like, looking at the payload, which is more, like, up there by that point, if you go around, like, this way, it's possible they won't notice you. And if you're playing someone like Reaper, you could just, like, teleport over there, and then bam, you can just, like, hug the wall, and they might never see you the entire time, right? Now, you've got to do this part, where they are likely to see you, but if you are playing Reaper, you can come back, teleport over there again, and they won't see you doing it, right? So that's the thing to watch out for the defending team. But even if we aren't just, like, being sneaky, if we're trying to get up there, this is the best route we can take, because this is the one where you're exposed to the bunker the least while we're getting there. Because we were in cover the whole time, now we're here, now we're gonna have to leave cover, but we haven't got to be in their line of sight for long. We've only got to get to the other side of the street. So if we got Reinhardt, Orisa, anybody, they can just put their shield out, and then we run across, and, like, look, by the time we get here, we're already not in view of the window. So if Orisa's shield goes, like, just over here, that covers most of the distance, and then bam, we're here. Now, we can come up and fight them, and, you know, they're going to play around this doorway at this point by all likelihood, if they don't just jump down immediately, which sometimes they would do as well. But we've covered the distance, we've got to them, right? And that's most of the work done. So if they're up there, that's the best route you can take. If they're over there, that's the best route you can take. Now, if they're over here, but we're not really playing a close-range team, like maybe we're running bunker back at them, maybe we've just got, like, Soldier Hanzo as our DPS or something like that, right? Then going this way can be good as well, because if we come around here, now we can kind of fight them, like, evenly, right? Because if we're not really a close-range team, or we're not playing a close-range hero, going this way puts us on them, but that doesn't necessarily help us if we're not people that can fight close range, right? Or people that don't want to. And, you know, if we're coming up this way at them, they have the positioning advantage on us the whole time. But if we come over through this way, yeah, we're covered, we've got a health kit in here, it's always nice to stage an offense near a health kit if you can. And then we're just fighting them, like, on their own terms, right? Now we're just, like, same field of view. Now we've got cover, we've got a health kit we can use, like, Orisa's here. Oh, we've got this car we can use for cover as well, though, like... And then, like, if we've got close-range people, they can start, like, skirting around this way as well, mostly covered, so... We can come over here, and, like, this is just an easier angle to, like, fight them long range at than from down here, where they have the positioning advantage. But if we can brawl it out with them, or, like, if you're playing by yourself, like, which for the most part I usually assume you're probably doing, if you're playing, like, anybody that can fight close range, you can come around here and, like, do this no problem. If you're playing somebody like Roadhog, you can, like, use this to get a different angle on their shield as well, because if they're defending over here, you can do the soft flank as Roadhog, Soldier, McCree, anybody, where you come over here and, like, you're looking behind their shield now. So, you know, it's not a great angle or anything. You can be a little bit more aggressive if you want, but for the most part, like, you are probably not going to die over here unless they collapse on you really solidly. So someone like Roadhog can come over here and try to get a different angle on them and just maybe hook somebody out of position and get a pick, and then, you know, hopefully that turns into something. If you're playing like Ash, come over and throw Bob at them, I guess, you know, that could be cool as well. Don't do that, but it would be funny if it worked. I mostly just was looking at the Bob button this entire time and was like, I gotta push it sooner or later, dude. But you can do this as like a soft flank if you're like playing by yourself and maybe make something happen. Anybody like Roadhog, McCree, Hanzo, Soldier, Ashe, doesn't really matter. You can come over here and you'll like be looking behind their shield, and it's not a huge line of sight, but if somebody like Ashe or somebody like Anna is stood like here, you know, which is like, don't stand in like open doorways ever. We already said this is one of the places to watch for, but, you know, be careful. But like, people don't, right? Like, people don't be careful. So you can come over here and sometimes get a pick, even if you're not like a flanker, right? Because you can come over here and it's pretty fucking safe, right? Like, it's pretty safe. I will say be careful because I have seen like Reapers and Mays sit like right here pretty much and just wait for somebody to do it and then like, ho, I've got you, right? So be careful, but that doesn't usually happen. So this is pretty safe just to like do a soft flank on them if you're not like a flanker hero. And those are like your options for this part. This is mostly what like attacking any of the maps is really about. It's just like knowing what options are available to you. Because the places with less options for attackers are always terrible, right? So once you get past this corner, that's like most of the work done. This is a lot easier to push through. If they've got somebody defending up there, like, you don't have much option. Like, you either need a long-range hit scan, or like, not necessarily long-range hit scan, a long-range DPS that can contest them, or a diver to go up there and deal with that. Because, like, you can't just let someone sit up there, like, free range shooting down at you the whole time. You've got to get them off of that. So, you know, you've got to have somebody that can contest that if somebody's up there. But a lot of times people will be running comps where they can't even get anybody up there to begin with. But if they are, you've got to do something about it, you know? So, here's something really important to bear in mind while you're doing this. If anybody is up there, deal with it, right? Like, don't let them sit up there doing that. Because if, like, you're trying to fight people up there, over here, and somebody, like, Soldier, McCree, Ashe, anybody's up here just, like, shooting at you the whole time, it's fucking impossible to deal with, dude. Somebody's got to deal with it. And I see this happen all the time. Doesn't matter who sat up there. If somebody sat up there, you have to send somebody to deal with it. You can't let them sit there doing that. Same over there, you know, you can't let them sit there doing that. You've got to deal with it. And if nobody's dealing with it, you got to deal with it. You can't let them do that. It's too ridiculously strong. Like, you've got to stop them. But like, once you get over here, that's most of the work done. It's mostly about getting a clean kill or a clean team fight to capture this so they can't just like stagger it out, because I've seen like some pretty like 2CP-ish things happen over here. It's harder for it to happen on this checkpoint than most, but like, it's happened, so it's mostly just about getting a clean kill. Or a clean fight, rather. This is the really hard point of the map. Once you get past that corner, most of the work's done. It's just about getting a clean engage. Now, this is a really open space, so if you're running anybody like May, Reaper, you know, their ults are going to get value here. Zarya as well, because there's not much cover over here, so they're going to start, like, really clustering next to their shield. Or sitting, like, far back over here. In which case, you know, deal with that as best as you can, pretty much. Like, poke prod at them, get someone to dive over there. You can't, like, if somebody is sat over here and they're, like, a real problem, it is feasible to, like, flank round through the top to get to them, you know? Like, but you can come, like, down around here, and you've mostly covered the distance on them. But that can, like, depending on who you're playing, like, if you don't have vertical mobility... Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. That was a long trip, right? Like... Not always feasible, but they're going to start, like, really clustering next to their shields. So if you've got any ultimates that punish people for clustering close together, this is where it's going to get, like, a lot of value in the team fight. Because they will, in all likelihood, be clustering together. Because there isn't a lot of just, like, natural cover to use in this area that isn't, like, in a bad spot. Because, like, you don't want to just, like, stand over here by yourself, right? So they'll be sat over here. Or they'll be clustering next to their shield right here, right? In which case the... big AoE ultimates will punish them for that, and those will be the things that'll help you get, like, the clean kill, but it's mostly just about, like, contesting the high ground here properly, which people are bad at doing, but it's, like, super important to do. You have to get the people off of the high ground here. That's, like, the thing that causes a lot of trouble here, is, like, you're trying to fight the Orisa and everybody, but McCree's just, like, fucking sick, dude, the whole time. You can't let him do that. So let's go on to the second checkpoint now. So here, we don't usually have to worry about this whole segment very much. If we have to worry about anything here, it's just going to be, like, the fact there's a McCree or a Hanzo or somebody up there, just, like, trying to do some damage while you're pushing through. In which case, you know, same as over here, just don't let them do it, dude. If somebody's up here, get them off. Don't let them do that for free. You've got to do something to get rid of them. Because I've seen that happen as well, where the attacking team has been pushing through here. Somebody's just been up there, and they've just let them do it. They've just let them sit up there shooting down at them the whole time, just, like, not bothering. But, like, you know, and, like, it looks kind of intimidating from down here, right? You're like, whoa, shit, dude, that looks big. But, like, if you're up here, like, you're actually pretty fucking close to the bad men, right? So, like, even if you don't have vertical mobility, like, you can contest people up here. If you're a McCree stood on the payload, you can throw the flashbang up there and kill them, right? Like, it's no big deal. The thing is, nobody ever wants to take responsibility, right? But you can't let them do it. That's, like, the thing you have to worry about right here, is just that. Just, you know, don't let them do it. So this is a checkpoint where you have to worry about getting flanked as the attacking team, because there are a lot of routes they can take to get to you. So, you know, when you're pushing through here, very common for the defending team to have, like, a Reaper just, like, poke through this doorway, right? And then, like, you're fighting over here, having a great time, and then Reaper comes up behind and just, like, gets your Ana, right? Gotta be careful for that. You gotta be careful for the flankers. Very common also for, like, a McCree player to be fancy and, like, come over here and try to deadeye from behind you. Also something to be aware of. So, be aware. You know, these are flank routes for you, but they're also feasible flank routes for the defending team as well. Because you can easily be fighting here and get flanked from these doorways. Similarly, once you're fighting up here, well, fuck, now you could get flanked from back there as well. So, be careful. You know, it's hard for that to happen, but I've seen it happen where people are just, like, fighting over here, like fighting the Orisa and everybody over here. And then, like, McCree is just, like... And then he tells you the time, right? Like, I've seen that happen. So, be careful of that as well. Similarly... If you're fighting, like, you know, over here, somebody can, they can have, like, somebody come through this doorway over here and, like, get up on you as well. So, be careful of that as well. It's one of those maps where you do have to worry about getting flanked as the attacking team, rather. So, be aware. This is the hard part to deal with right here. It's just, like, getting through this spot because you're going to be looking up at the bad men and they're going to be shooting you the whole time. You're trying to push through this and it's really scary. So, but, you know... If we've got, like, a bunker up there, just, like, annoying heroes up there, maybe their bunker's down here, but we just got, like, a soldier or something up there, like, we gotta deal with it, right? Well, we go through here. And we're right on top of them. No big deal, right? If we're playing somebody like Reaper, like, if you're playing, like, Reaper, and it's only, like, one person is up here, you can come through this doorway and just, like, walk right up to them, right? Like, come through this doorway, and you're practically there, right? You can walk up and start pressuring them. With someone like McCree, you can, like... just start walking at him, like bait his flashbang or something like that with the Wraith form and then kill him, you know, if he's up here by himself. If a whole team is sat up here together, you know, you're going to need to get a little bit more teamwork or do something to disrupt them, but they will not often be a full team up there. It'll usually be that most of their team is sat down here, like contesting the payload, and it will be a couple of people up there, maybe one or two people up there. So you just got to do something about it, right? Nobody's dealing with it, you gotta be the one that deals with it. You gotta get, like, somebody up there to deal with it, because trying to push through here, dealing with the team in front of you while somebody's up there shooting away at you, oh god, too hard, too hard. Somebody's gotta deal with it. You can go for some soft flanks over here as well. You know, we talked about being able to do it as the defending team. You can do it as the attacking team as well, because you can come up here. And as long as nobody's up here, like, you can come around here, you're looking behind their shield now. So you're playing, like... Ash, McCree, Roadhog, doesn't really matter. You can Hanzo, you can come over here. You're looking behind their shield now, so you might be able to make something happen, get a pick. Hopefully you can proceed through. And if you're over here, you can kind of fight the person that's over there on, like, even footing, because now, like, they've got to use that doorway as cover from you. That's, like, their only option up there. And I see a lot of people defending up here, just, like, sit, like, all the way over here, right? Like, fairly far away from the doorway. It doesn't seem like you're that far away from the doorway, but you are if somebody who only needs to hit you a couple of times can kill you. Because if they're stood, like, there, and you're playing Ash, you go... Like, by the time they get there, if they don't have movement, you can get, like, 2 or 3 shots in at them before they can get to the doorway, which is enough to kill them. Especially if they don't, like, notice you're there. Because if, like, somebody sit there and there's just stood still, you're like, sick, free headshot, right? You've already done most of the work at that point. You come around this corner, you're playing Ash, you chuck the dynamite at them before they notice, and then you've only got to get another shot in before they die, getting around the corner, right? So, you can contest them from over here as the long-range DPS, and it's safe. Like, it's pretty fucking safe. As long as nobody is just, like, sat over here, and you're watching for anybody that's got, like, vertical mobility or, like, a Roadhog or somebody hooking you, this is really safe to do. And if you've got, like, a Mercy, she can, like, assist you 100% safe. Because if you're playing, like, Ash, trying to get a pick over here, Mercy's boosting you from back here, like, watching over there, fucking safe as can be. So, this is actually pretty safe to do as the long-range DPS. So, you know, if you're having trouble dealing with it, come over here, get a different angle. Now you're pushing them from behind their shield. They've got to worry about you. Anybody's up there, they've got to worry about you. If they're over there, you know, this is still, like, not that bad. You've still got cover you can use, but they're in a way better spot because they've got all that cover around them as well. So, it's not so good for fighting the person over there, but it's still feasible. You know, you can still contest them to some extent. But that's, like, pretty much it. You know, these are, like, the routes available to you. The biggest thing is just going to be people up here. If there's a bunker, like, set up over here, like, in this room, basically, get, like, some, ultimates that are going to disrupt them. Like, chuck a Blizzard up here, you know, get a Reaper up here behind them, start spinning, chuck a Graviton up there, get a Riptire up here, get one of those big punishing AoE ultimates up here, because, you know, if you got a bunker sat here, like, their point of retreat will be coming into this room. Well, fuck, dude, this is, like, a pretty squashed place with no cover in it, right? You send a Riptire in here, like, that's gonna be bad for them. So, if, like, a full bunker set up here, and they're, like, really committed to it, like, they're not jumping down, AoE ultimates, they punish, like, people clustering together. Chuck some of them up here, and it will, if not kill them, disrupt them, get the bunkers spread out, and that makes it easier to deal with. And that's pretty much the second checkpoint. At this, like, once you get past this, it's, again, just about getting a clean team fight and not getting stalled out over here. I see it happen here quite frequently because it's not that far from their spawn. They can get back quite fast. So, it's just about getting a clean fight over here. You know, big open space. We talked about it being good for Mei earlier. As the defending team, it's just as good for, like, that as the attacking team as well. Right? And this is the checkpoint where the close-range DPS really do get to shine a little bit more because it's a more confined location and there's more routes you can take to, like, cover distance without exposing yourself to the enemy. So, it's about the clean fight over here and, like, picking off the stragglers. If you're having trouble, get some of those ultimates that will punish people for being in this open space. Get the Meis out here, the Zaryas out here, the Divas out here to use to, like, chuck their ultimates out into this space where it's really hard to stand in versus those big AoE ultimates. And be ready for, like, McCree's to try and use Deadeye up here. Happens all the time. Like, if there's a McCree with Deadeye and you're pushing up this way, he's gonna do it. Be ready for it. Like, don't let him do it. He'll try. So, third checkpoint. This is the point where you really don't have many options to you, you know, as we covered previously. The attacking as the defending team, you don't have to worry about too much. It's really about contesting, like, early on, it's just about contesting the people up here. Like, just don't let them do it for free, right? Like, get somebody to help, like, at least get one of your DPS to, like, fight back at them, if nothing else, right? Don't just let them sit up there contest, like, shooting down at you for free. We already talked about how it's not very easy to dive up there because of the sheer amount of space you have to travel to get in range. And then, like, once you get up there, they aren't really even that concerned. So, you know, contest them a little bit. If you're playing someone like Genji, you know, it's a little easier to get up there and try and contest them. But, like, really, the most feasible way to do it is have another long-range DPS that can contest them. Just don't let them do it for free. Like, make it at least hard for them. Make them have to worry about your DPS as well, rather than just purely worrying about clicking on your team's heads. Have them worry about having their head clicked on at the same time. You don't have to worry about too much over here. If the enemy team is, like, defending over there, just, like, be cool, dude. Just, like, push with the payload. The payload's big, like, it gives you a lot of cover coming this way up. So, like, if they're over there, just, like, don't sweat it early. Don't do anything rash. Just, like, let the payload do most of the pushing for you. And then, like, once you're in range, pick the fight with them. And if you're playing the long-range team, you know, you're fighting them the whole way up there. Hopefully you can, like, put enough pressure on them that they start wanting to back up as you're pushing up if you're a more long-range team. But if you're a more close-range team, let the payload do the work for you, dude. It can do most of the work right here. Even if you, like, can't contest the person over there, you can just stand on this side of the payload, and it will give you some cover from them, plus whatever you have from your tanks as well, right? So just don't panic coming up this path. It's not that bad to cover this distance as long as you're not doing anything crazy. Like, as long as you're not getting caught out of position, as long as you're not overstepping your boundaries on the payload, you know, you're not going to get in too much trouble doing this. If there's somebody up there, just, like, get somebody to deal with it, dude. Like, just solve the problem before it becomes a problem. Like, get somebody over here. Because this, like, if they're up there, that's not hard to dive to, right? Like, you can come around this way and you're covered the whole time. Now you're, like, there, right? If you're Reaper, you can teleport in. If you're any of the divers, you can jump up there, no problem. Just don't let it become an issue. Get somebody up there to deal with it before it becomes an issue. And if it's somebody like McCree, I see McCree players sit up here a lot, right? Like, I've seen McCree players be like, I got Deadeye. Oh, they're gonna get so fucking pranked when they come through here. So, bear in mind, if you haven't seen McCree for a while, McCree players love to sit up here, dude. I see it a lot. Just don't let them do it. We talked earlier, if you're playing McCree up here, like, that's scary because of all the distance you have to cover to get to safety. So, just don't let them do it, dude. Just don't let them do it. Have somebody go and deal with that situation. If nobody wants to deal with the situation, you go deal with the situation. Don't let it be an issue. Because if you don't do anything, like, right, like, if you just don't do anything, just imagine trying to push here while somebody back there is just, like, sick, right? You can't let them do it. Just don't let them do it. Contest them. Contest the person over there. Just bear in mind that, like, unless you've got, like, a Widow or an Ashe that's gonna click on their head real good, you're probably not gonna kill the person over there. It's just about not letting them have free reign. Right, it's just about contesting them. Over here, that one we can deal with, right? Like, that's a convenient location for us to get to. We can deal with that situation. That one, it's more just about stemming it as much as we can. Just don't panic. Now, once we get here, shit, dude, it's hard. You don't have many options available to you. So now that we're up here, it's easier for us to dive to that person up there, right? Now we can contest them a little bit more easily. Because now, if we've got a long-range DPS, they've got more cover they can use to try and contest the person. They're closer, so it'll be, like, now, like, McCree can't really contest the person from over here. They're too far away. But once you get here, McCree starts to feasibly be able to contest them as well, if he couldn't previously. And now, like, if we've got, like, a Genji, a Doomfist, anybody like that, they can now cover this, Winston Diva, they can now cover that distance significantly easier, because we're so much closer to them at this point. So, if we've got any divers, be patient. Hard to get there from here. Once we get here, a lot easier to do now. Worry about, like, covering the easy ground first and just not, like, getting exposed. Now we can start, like, seriously contesting the person. If we're playing, like, Ashe, we can now, like, do this to contest them, because they're not going to have a shield up there, right? Like, no Orisa is going to come and sit up there with that person. So, you can now start using Dynamite to contest them as well. If you're playing Widow, you can chuck your Venom Mine up there to contest them as well. We've now got more ways to contest the person, because most of the distance has been covered. And now the divers can feasibly get up there and deal with it. So the main issue is just getting through this choke point, though. So we can flank, because we've got this doorway over here. They will, like, likely see us doing it, but if nobody's up there, it is possible for us to be unseen. Because if nobody's up there, right, they're worrying about the bridge, we can come under here, and they wouldn't see us until we're coming through the doorway. So it's possible to do this sneaky as long as nobody's up there. If somebody's up there, well, shit, they're just gonna see us doing this, right? And it's possible for them to see you on the bridge as well, but it's a lot harder, so it's possible to sneak this way if you're playing a hero that, like, wants to be flanky, right? You can come around this way. Even if you're playing, like, Roadhog, dude, like, you know, you can kind of come over here if you really want. Like, I don't really advise it, but, like, you can. Even, like, Soldier, Ashe, Hanzo, like, you can come over here, and, like, bearing in mind they're all going to be over there and up there, so, like, they have to come far to get to you, right? Like, nobody's going to sit camping this corner unless they know you're coming ahead of time. So, you can come up here and, like, try and do some fancy, cheeky stuff, and then, like, hey, I'm out. The thing is, if you don't have vertical mobility, doing this will remove you from the fight for an extremely long time, because now you have to come all this way to get back again. So if you're a slow hero, doing that is like a huge opportunity cost. So you've got to be really confident that what you do when you get there is going to work to do that, but it is worth bearing in mind you can if you think you see an opportunity to do it, right? But if you're playing just like any of the flankers, you know, Reaper, Doomfist, Tracer, McCree, even Pharah, right? Like, you can come around this way, and, like, this is your best flanking route. People often don't check this doorway, and you're on them, right? Like, their Annas are going to sit, like, really far back one way or the other. So, like, if Anna's, like, over here, usually where they stand, as long as they're not looking, like, Anna's looking down their scope, healing their tanks, right? You come in this way, and she's just looking down her scope the whole time. You're like, sick, dude. I'm going to get a fucking kill for free here. So that's like your only real option flanking wise, and if you got vertical mobility you can go through this, like shave a little bit of time off, but this angle is like, they're more likely to see you coming through this doorway, right? And you'll have, if you're like Reaper, you've got to use an ability to get up there, so like that can be not worth the cost in and of itself, because if you're playing Reaper, it might be more worth your time coming through this doorway and then teleporting up there, right? Because if you come over here, nobody's looking, teleport onto that ledge, you're now behind whoever was up in that parapet, and now you can stop them, right? It's not really a parapet, it's more of a rampart. Whatever. Same difference. So, you know, that's your option for flanking, and, you know, you can't really do anything else fancy-wise, right? Like, if you get, like, up here, now we can start using this doorway as a soft flank as well. We can get our Roadhog boy coming through here, like McCree, Hanzo, anybody coming through here, and I can see past their shield and give it a go, right? Do have to deal with the horrible Bloom looking through the doorway, though. So that's unfortunate, but we can do that now if we get up here. But, dude, that's it as far as, like, fancy plans go. Like, other than that, we're just smacking our head against this doorway until it works, right? We've got, you know, we can do the AoE ultimates again, because they're going to be fairly clustered together. There's not a lot of cover on the inside of the doorway, right? They're going to be behind their shield or up on the high ground, but most people are going to be down here, like contesting from here, or sat further back if they're a long-range hero. But there's, like, no cover in this entire space in here, right? So we can chuck some scary ultimates in here. If we're playing, like, we can just fully switch to a dive comp once most of this distance has been covered and just try to, like, rush the people in here, because there's not a lot of cover, there's not a lot of places for people to flee to. They're, like, relying on their teammates helping them pretty much, so sometimes if they're, like, a bunch of, like, longer range heroes, people that are vulnerable to dive comps, this is a scary place to be in that kind of brawl from, if you're that kind of composition, just because there's, like, no cover, no places to run to. You're relying on teammates to help you fight them off. And you'll probably be close to each other, so it's feasible that they'll help each other fairly consistently, but, you know, that sometimes works. Other than that, dude, we're just falling back on classic breaking choke point strats, where we're chucking ultimates at it until it works, pretty much. Because we really can't do a lot of fancy things here, unfortunately. We've got one feasible flanking route, one soft flank route, and, you know, big thing for here is just contesting this choke point, this high ground, and, like, trying to get through as best we can. Just don't let people sit up there for free, and that's, like, the most actionable thing you can do outside of just, like, standard breaking choke point procedure, pretty much. And that's more or less Havana right there. I guess I didn't cover what heroes would be good for the attacking team. You probably inferred roughly from everything else we talked about, though. It's long-range DPS. If they've got a lot of long-range DPS, run a dive comp at them. You know, contest those snipers. Don't let those snipers sit up there having a fun time. But often you'll probably run a bunker right back at them, or run long-range hit scan, or long-range DPS back at them. That's what you'll usually do. Pretty much that's it. Supports stay pretty much the same, and those are like the general comps you'll run on this map. You know, not a lot of fancy stuff happens on Havana. It's a fairly straightforward map. I think it's you know, I think this is one of the most beginner-friendly maps in the entire game, because it really, like, is upfront with you with what it wants you to do on this map, right? Like, there's a lot of long sight lines to abuse, and a lot of cover for the defending team to use, and there's a lot of even the attacking team, right? Like, there's a lot of long sight lines you can abuse back at them as well. You just don't have the benefit of having high ground most of the time. But it's a really upfront map. There's not a lot of, like, fancy stuff. All the flank routes are, like, really obvious and telegraphed. It's a pretty, like, beginner-friendly map. It's very... I would describe it as being a very honest map, you know? You can't do much really, like, funny, underhanded stuff on this map. It's a lot of just kind of, like, fighting it out with the other team, rather than, like, any kind of, like, real cheese stuff is going to happen to you, which some other maps are prone to doing, right? Like, it's no Hanamura. It's no Paris. So that's nice. So it's pretty much Havana. So thank you very much for watching if you did. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you could join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us. I've started streaming on Twitch Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 8 p.m. EST till midnight EST. There's a link to the channel in the description. And if you managed to make it all the way through the video and somehow still found it enjoyable, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middling quality in the future. And I hope you found the video helpful. God damn, I fucked it up. Ah, so close.